This is GARIS Masculist-MGTOW flyers, that is 2 3-page essays on the themes of masculism and MGTOW. Written and read aloud by Prof. Dr. Hugo de Garis. This is flyer number 195, entitled Masculist-MGTOW Glossary, Part 1. Description. This flyer is part 1 of a 2-part glossary of Masculist-MGTOW terms. Anyone who wishes to have a quick overview of the ideas of the Masculists and the MGTOWs can study the definitions of the terms in this 2-part glossary. Part 1 consists of terms starting with letter A to M. And the flyer itself. Masculist-MGTOW Glossary, Part 1 of 2, A to M. Masculism is an ism, that is, an ideology, with lots of new ideas that need new labels. As the number of ideas increases, and hence new labels, the need grows for the creation of a masculist glossary, which is what this flyer is. It consists of a list of masculist and MGTOW labels and their succinct definitions. The best ideologists, for example Karl Marx, Mao Zedong, etc., knew the power of labels, of concept names that force people to say, "What's that?" when they hear a new term for the first time. Labels have great influence and can be used as intellectual tools to motivate people to change their behaviors and attitudes. Men can use these masculist terms to hit back at fluffy feminists and give them a taste of their own medicine, and can be used as intellectual tools to men fair, that's the verb, to men fair society. Here's the list in alphabetical order. Terms used in a definition that have their own definition in this glossary are in capitals. Not that that's particularly relevant to the spoken word, but if you read it. Okay, starting. ARCER, that's A-R-C-E-R. ARCER is an acronym for After Retirement Career, that's the ARC. That is, someone who is retired, who then takes up a new career for the remaining decades of his life, doing what he loves, rather than what he's paid to do as a wage slave. ARTWOMB is an abbreviation for artificial womb, which will allow men to grow their own kids. Japanese scientists have already grown a goat in an artwomb. Once men have artwombs and sex bots, women will lose their traditional 2 monopolies of womb and vagina, and will go into deep existential crisis. Feminism will disappear overnight, and women will be forced to be very nice to men. Otherwise, they will not be able to compete with men's sex bots and artwombs. A waltz, that's A-W-A-L-T, a waltz, an acronym for All Women Are Like That. That is, the MGTOW view that all women are by nature immoral, parasitic, manslaving vermin, to be avoided. The opposite of an awalt is a nawalt with an N in front, N-A-W-A-L-T. In other words, not all women are like that. Baby farms, a government institution in which women are given tax-paid subsidies to have kids. Career competent, having had an education that allows people to have a career which pays well because they have acquired a real skill that the economic marketplace values. Cash machines. Fluffies look upon men as cash machines. That is, they see men's role on this earth to pay for women to have babies. Fluffies see men as exploitable cash machines and have no loyalty to them if men lose their financial exploitability. Child mind. Women have 10 billion fewer neurons in their brain, so have greater difficulty seeing the big picture and behaving as responsible adults as seen by males. Many MGTOWs see women as grown-up children who should not be taken seriously, who should be treated as children and not be given male adult rights. Emos, that's EMO. These are women who accept the idea of equal moral obligations with men. That is, that women have a moral duty to become FIPs and share the burden of earning the living by acquiring a career-competent education. Masculists demand that women become emo-FIPs or are punished by men, ignoring them to death. Emo-FIPs An emo-fip is a fip woman who is also an emo. That is, she believes that she has a moral duty to be fip and should not parasite off the money of a man. An emo-fip despises fluffies as much as masculists, seeing fluffies as immoral, parasitic, man-slaving vermin the way masculists do. Female masculists. These are women who agree with the views of masculists, usually because they want to have babies and need a man to help pay for them to have a kid. Being a fip single mother is tough, requiring a lot of energy and generating stress. Femalian. A masculist term expressing contempt for women's alien nature, that is very different from a man's, namely parasitic, not taking responsibility for her own life, achieving little, etc., etc. Feminazi bitch. A masculist abusive term expressing utter hatred for feminazis for having taken over the divorce courts and financially massacring 1 in 4 married fathers, ruining their lives, 1 million US men per year. Financial exploitability. Fluffies see men as financially exploitable objects, whose purpose is to pay for women to stay at home and have babies. Fluffies judge men by their level of financial exploitability. If a man loses his exploitability, a fluffy will coldly drop him and go looking for a more exploitable male. FIP, an acronym for Financially Independent Person. The masculists talk about the creation of a FIP society in which both sexes are socialized and educated to be FIPs, so that one sex does not parasite off the money of the other sex. The FIPPing of society would solve most of the gender issues of the masculists. FIP education. An education starting at 16 in high schools and continuing on at university that allows a student to learn a skill that's valued by the economy so that that person can become a real FIP as an adult. Fipping. Forcing a woman to become a FIP by ignoring her totally if she's a fluffy. Masculists and MGTOWs will only connect or twef with women who are FIPs. FIP society. A society in which both sexes, especially women, are socialized by parents and educated by teachers and professors to be FIPs. Creating a FIP society is one of the major goals of the masculists, who see its creation as solving most of men's gender issues, for example, wiping out manslavery, bringing in the para, removing misandrous gender laws, etc. FIP up. To FIP up is the equivalent of man up, that is, to make the effort to become a FIP, as demanded for women by masculists. A woman who does not FIP up and remains a fluffy will not get a masculist nor a MGTOW to have anything to do with her. First halver is a young man under 40 who is living the first half of his life. Most MGTOWs are first halvers and hence are ignorant of the experience of life of the second halver men, a common complaint of the second halver MGTOWs and masculists. Fluffy. A fluffy is a traditional woman who expects to be able to parasite off the money of a man. Fluffies are the enemy of the masculists, who aim to wipe them out by refusing to have anything to do with them, forcing them to FIP up and become FIPs. Otherwise, they rot on the shelf to extinction, being ignored to death so that their fluffy genes are wiped from the gene pool. Fluffy crap. Fluffy crap are the soft option majors that require only memorizing and little analytical thought. For example, in high school, English literature, history, languages, and not math nor the sciences. At university, English literature, languages, philosophy, psychology, sociology, anthropology, women's studies, history, etc. And not STEM fields, science, tech, engineering, and math, nor the professions, medicine, dentistry, law, architecture, etc. Fluffy crappers. Fluffy crappers are women who expect to become fluffies as adults and expect to be able to parasite off the money of a man by studying fluffy crap at high school and university, thus ending up with a fluffy crap diploma that the economy does not value. So the fluffy crapper is usually poor, who then looks around for some manslave to parasite upon, to have him pay for her to live in a middle-class house to raise her kids in. Fluffy feminist. A feminist who is also a fluffy, that is, most feminists, A fluffy feminist is a label with strong hypocritical connotations. That is, a feminist who wants equal rights for women, but rejects equal obligations for women. That is, sharing the burden of earning the living by bothering to get a FIP education, so that she is a FIP as an adult and does not parasite off the money of a man. Fluffy feminist hypocrites. Masculists see fluffy feminists as hypocrites, because on the one hand, they want equal rights for women, but reject equal obligations for women, that is, accepting the burden of sharing equally the burden of earning the living and bothering to get a career-competent education. This hypocrisy makes fluffy feminists hated by Masculists and MGTOWs, which is why they are labelled feminazi bitches. Fluffy FIP. A fluffy FIP is a woman who is a FIP in terms of her career, but still has traditional attitudes regarding men, seeing them as cash machines. Masculists demand that women become emo FIPs, that is, who expect on moral grounds to be FIPs. Fluffy parasite. A fluffy is by definition a parasite. The word parasite is added for emphasis. Fluffy repellent. As more men become MGTOWs and Masculists, women are becoming ever more desperate to attract the attention of men, so that women can have babies by being given the sperm of high-quality men. Those high-quality MGTOWs who wish women to stay away from them often choose to look poor, thus repelling women's hypergamy instinct. A woman who sees a poor man will not moisten her vagina, so she will avoid the poor-looking male. MGTOWs use this trick as a form of fluffy repellent, equivalent to a mosquito repellent. A fourth quarter male, a man in the fourth quarter of his life, that is, over 65. I'm a fourth quarter male. Gender issues. Problems specific to a particular gender. For example, for men, the massive injustice committed against them in the divorce courts, where one married father in 4 is financially massacred and has his life ruined. Or the lack of the para, which is one of the most blatant forms of sexual discrimination against men that exists. Gender laws. Laws specific to one's sex, gender, or the other. For example, women have an abortion right, men don't. The divorce laws. Equal pay for equal work. Equal access to the professions for equal qualifications, etc. Gender politicians. Gender politicians are politicians who create the laws that govern behaviour regarding the genders, sexes. For example, regarding divorce, abortion right, equal pay for equal work, etc. Genociders. The Masculists accuse the feminazi bitches of now being genociders, wiping out whole populations, because they've taken over the divorce courts and made them so toxic for men that 2/3 of young men in Western countries now refuse to marry, refuse to have kids, and spend their money on themselves. That is, they are MGTOWs. This paternity rejection is wiping out whole populations, which is something that the hated feminazi bitches have caused, making them genociders who have to be stopped. Genocentric. The adjective of a society whose laws are oriented in favour of women, centred around women at the expense of men. For example, in the divorce courts, lack of the para, etc. Hypergamy. Hypergamy is the desire and instinct of women to mate with a man who has higher socioeconomic status than she has, in order to have a baby with genes superior to hers. Hypergamy makes good Darwinian evolutionary sense for women. Jewish banksters. The hated Frankist, Satanist Jewish banksters, who are indirectly responsible for the deaths of over 200 million people last century, who played a major role in the engineering of the 2 world wars, who created the Great Depression, engineered the Russian, that is Jewish communist, revolution that holocausted 66 million white Christian Russians, made debt slaves of us all with their paper fiat currency, debt note, Ponzi schemes, inflated the currency, destroying people's savings, took control of the central banks and printed money out of thin air to bribe the politicians and destroy democracies, assassinated 6 US presidents, 4 successfully, 2 almost, made it illegal in 24 Western countries to criticize them, etc. Masculists are deeply suspicious that the gender politicians were bribed by the Jewish banksters to pass misandrous divorce laws that would cause men to hate and avoid women, thus wiping out the Goy population to help fulfill the Talmudic prophecy of having the Jews rule the world from Jerusalem and later wiping out the Goy. Manslave. A man who works for a woman, for a fluffy parasite, so that she can raise her kids in a house paid for by him. Later, a quarter of such wives will take his house for herself via a divorce, using the fluffy feminist-dominated divorce courts. Manslavery. Enslaving a man by turning him into a manslave, socializing boys to be manslaves to fluffy parasites. MARA, an acronym for Maternity Rejection Right, aka abortion right, the right of a woman to reject an unwanted pregnancy. Masculism. Masculism is men's liberation, that is, an ideology to free men from the oppression of the traditional man-slave role of the man, that is, working for a woman, and from gender laws that are discriminatory against men. Masculism pushes the fipping of women so that men are freed up to devote more of their time and energy to doing what they love, rather than being man-slaves to fluffy parasites. Masculist. A masculist, usually male, is an advocate of masculism. Well, that's the end of part 1. Part 2 will be much the same introduction, and then giving the definitions of the remaining terms from M to Z. Ciao.